Hey everybody, this is Elon from the Eggard podcast. I have an amazing guest today. I'm actually very excited to talk to you. It's Brad Dacus. It's from the Pacific Justice Institute. Brad, just before we get started, I'm going to let you talk about yourself. I just want to say that I've recently had kind of more diving into religion, and especially with everything going on in the world. And so what you were doing caught my attention, and I was just really excited to have you on. So I don't know if you want to give a quick background about what you do.
Sure, absolutely. I'm a constitutional law attorney, and I founded Pacific Justice Institute back in 1997 with the help of former U.S. Attorney General Ed Meese. And together we formed the organization. We started in Sacramento. We got donated office space, and we grew from there. Fast forward, we now have 36 offices in 26 states. We do all our work without charge, defending religious freedom for everyone, parents' rights against the government, the sanctity of human life, all without charge. And one thing that makes us really unique is that, of course, not only do we have the largest footprint of its kind coast to coast, but we also work hard to make sure that everyone gets help, that no one is left on the side of the road. So we don't just cherry pick a few cases and tell everyone else to fend for themselves. We really work hard to make sure that no one's left on the side of the road. And that's a really huge responsibility, but it's something that really makes us distinct as a nonprofit legal organization.
Can people go to pgi.org to donate? Is that where people should go?
Yes, and it's fully tax deductible. And I tell you, we greatly appreciate support from people. If they look at charitynavigator.com, I think it is, when they look at that website, it gives an objective assessment of different organizations based on transparency and efficiency. And we at Pacific Justice Institute have the highest rating of any comparable organization in the country, bar none. So yeah, we're very efficient, and as an organization, we're a true nonprofit organization, and having a big bang for the buck, as most of our supporters will say.
Well, I love that, and because there's so much, I would say, abuse of charities nowadays, and part of the reason I like bringing people on is so that people can support causes that we believe in as a company and kind of expose people. And I just love what you guys are doing. I want to say that I've noticed a trend specifically in the United States, which is shocking to me. I think the thing that really made me wake up to this was when they sent SWAT teams to the home of the pastor who was fighting for pro-life. Have you noticed like an extreme shift? And if so, when, in terms of how our country perceives Christianity, perceives religion, and the actions they've taken against it?
Yeah, actually, before the pandemic, we had about 30% of our cases were criminal defense cases, and they were defending everyone of those cases was a pastor or a minister, and they were all criminally prosecuted for the same thing, which is preaching the gospel, preaching from the Bible in public places, protected clearly by the First Amendment of the Constitution. So this is where we were at before the pandemic, and we're still taking those cases on all across the country. It's usually, intolerant, dark blue cities, if you will, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Boston, Las Vegas, where they're just very hostile to people sharing their faith, sharing their Christian faith in particular. I also want to make it clear too, we go out of our way also to defend people of the Jewish faith. There was a Jewish synagogue they wanted to build in Martinez in the San Francisco Bay Area a number of years ago. And they were told that the synagogue, people wanted to build the synagogue, were told, well, we'll let you build it, but you have 21 land use restrictions you have to comply with for only one day of the week, Saturday. So we at Pacific Justice, we defended them. We got all 21 land use restrictions removed. We also are working hard on asylum cases to defend Christians and Jews who are coming from Muslim countries or communist countries, and their life is hanging in the balance. We do all those cases without charge, and we're very aggressive to make sure that they're not sent back to certain death.
Wow, that is intense. So how long have you been at this?
So since 1997, so a little more than 25, I guess 26 years.
Okay.
And so we're very established. We've proven ourselves, and which is really nice because we're able to get our case matters resolved without litigation, probably more than 9 out of 10 times, which really helps our efficiency and to move on to other cases that require litigation. Initially, we had to pretty much sue every single one of the case matters that came our way, but now those who are opposed to religious freedom or parental rights take us very seriously for everyone's good.
Do you mind me asking what, like, I want to know you as a person, what motivated you? What was kind of the moment that you realized you were going to do this? Because you've dedicated your life to fight for this kind of stuff. So that's it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I was originally going to go to seminary and be a pastor. I mean,
Okay.
all of my relatives, all my family knew from a young age that, I was going to be a pastor. I said I was going to be a pastor and go to seminary. And then I finished my undergrad from A&M with a degree in finance. I'm working for U.S. Senator Phil Gramm in Washington, D.C. as a legislative assistant, trying to, make that decision. Do I go to seminary and be a pastor? And so I prayed about it, fasted, sought counsel. And the more I did, read the Bible, the more I did, the stronger my desire shifted to go to law school. It didn't make a lot of sense at the time. I thought maybe I'm supposed to be a criminal prosecutor, clean the streets, if you will. But while I was in law school, I interned with the Rutherford Institute after my first year, where they defend religious freedom, parents' rights, sanctity of life. I thought, oh, this would be awesome to do someday when I'm really qualified. And then just 5 months after out of law school, I'm working for a firm in Sacramento. I get a call from John Whitehead, the head of Rutherford, asking me to open an office on the West Coast and coordinate litigation in 14 Western states. I met with him. I said, look, let me tell you the 5 reasons why I'm not qualified. You should definitely choose someone else. This work is too important. And how many people try to sell themselves out of a job,
Yeah.
So, but that's what I did because I revere the work too much, and I wanted the best person, and I didn't think I was the best. But he said, Brad, I'm convinced you're the one for the job. It's really just between you and God. I said, oh, great. So I prayed about it, and I finally came to the conclusion that I clearly wasn't competent and qualified, and that's when the Lord hit me over the head with the whole truth, which is that's the whole point. And God scripturally chooses pretty much unqualified, incompetent people many times in Scripture. So Moses, Paul, etc., David, the last of the run, if you will. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it, but this is not a molehill. This is a mountain, God. You're going to have to move it. And it took off. I developed a huge team of attorneys, affiliate attorneys in 14 Western states for the next 5 years. Then after 5 years, they closed down the regional offices, offered me a job back east in DC to be the public affairs head of the office in DC. I'd be the media face for all of their cases, represent the organization in Congress, be the number 2, if you will, of the organization. And I said yes, and then I had insomnia and more insomnia and more insomnia. And finally, I concluded, oh, shoot, I got to pray. And I did. And when I did, the question came to my mind was, Brad, what desires has God put on your heart? And the answer was not to be in the media in DC. The answer was to make sure people got the help where it was needed the most, which at the time was on the West Coast. I call it the beaches of Omaha for the fight for religious freedom in America. The West Coast it is, and now it's all over the country. But so I said, yes, God, I'll do it. I'll keep doing the work out here, start Pacific Justice Institute, but I need just a few requirements: free office space, free computer system, keep me on the radio stations for free. You have to be the black God in just 3 months. I'm never going to charge anyone. I thought it was very reasonable, with my requirements. And God came through on all of it. And PJI was born. And now it's exciting. I have a radio show that's heard, the Dacus Report. It's heard on over 800 stations and transmitters across America. Commentary, Legal Edge, and over 1,000. We have a TV program called Brad Dacus Live, streaming on his channel. And then a new one called Law, Faith and Law. And we're getting out the information. We don't pay for our media time anywhere. And we don't pay for our office space anywhere. It's all donated office space. And we right now have over 220 cases, Elon, in active litigation right now, over 220. And just one of them alone is a class action against the city of San Francisco, probably my favorite city to sue, by the way. on behalf of about 1,000 employees who are purged from their faith, or purged from their jobs because of their faith in the workplace.
Wow. I mean, can I tell you what I love about that story? Because there's lessons in everything, you know what I mean? And so you don't realize the impact you're going to have. You think your life will have a purpose in one direction, and then you find out you can do so much more in another area that you would have never connected to the very thing that your calling was about in the first place.
Right.
And I really believe one of the biggest problems a lot of men have in society nowadays is that they don't live with purpose. So you're a nice example of really just staying the course. And even when it changes course, to trust in that, because behind it, you were just, following your faith, and it just led you in the right direction. You had a lot of trust. So I think that's a good lesson for everyone who watches, who might feel a bit lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like that point because I tell people, look, it's not about who you are, it's about whose you are. So if you're a Christian and you've surrendered your life to the Lord, and you decide, hey, God, I'm yours, then we need to be open to what God wants to do. And it may be something glamorous, and maybe something high profile, maybe something low profile. It's not about pleasing men. It's not about being recognized by people. It's just being obedient to what God puts on our plate for us to do, to love and to connect, and to reach out. There was an elderly woman. I called her my adopted grandma. We'd have holidays together up in Sacramento, and she loved the Lord. And she eventually became blind, and she said, I just wish God would take me home. There's nothing I can do. And I said, what are you talking about? You're blind, so now you can engage in intercessory prayer as a prayer warrior like never before. You have nothing distracting you. She goes, you're right. And so she spent for the next few months before she passed away as an intercessory prayer warrior. So it doesn't have to be glamorous. It's just being open and realizing it's not about us. It's what God wants to do with us. I do a lot of speaking, and I do a lot of guest preaching at churches. I don't charge anything. That's probably why I'm invited. But it's one of the most exciting things in my life, though, is when I'm on airplanes, getting the opportunity to visit with people where they are in life, and at times share the hope that's in my life and the gospel, and other times to learn from. There's so much in the way of opportunity that all of us have to make a difference if we're willing to connect and willing to be open to what God wants.
Beautiful. I was going to ask you something. I don't know if you're allowed to talk about active cases. I don't know if we were talking about kind of how before COVID, you had noticed that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe that there were things were escalating a little bit more against Christians in the country. This is something that I've just noticed, not based on any evidence. Anecdotally, I've seen like the reports that have come out on what they've attacked the government, what they've gone after, and it's just seemed very odd to me. It seems completely unjustified. Again,
Right.
do you notice that there's some kind of weird trend? And why is it even happening?
Yeah.
There seems to be this weird decay of the fabric in our society. So I just would
Right.
love your perspective on it.
Well, there's a good and a bad to this. So I'll start with the bad first. The bad first is absolutely right. The trend is a dark trend. It's moving in a terrible direction, a trend of hostility. When I was a kid, you had two kinds of people: those who went to church, and those be knowing they should be going to church. And now we have people who are followers of Jesus, sincere in their faith, and including also Jewish people, sincere in their faith. And then we have another group who hate people who are Christians or Jews in our society today. And it's not just a 0.1%, it's a large block, particularly in the millennial and the Z generation level. It's without question, it's very, very common. We see it in the workplace. We at PGI have helped thousands of people purged from their jobs because of their religious conviction not to take the jab. Fortunately, we've saved hundreds of thousands from losing their jobs and possibly losing their lives statistically, who didn't need the jab, who would have a percentage of who would have had ramifications probably. We've seen that, in the past we defended churches and synagogues and their ability not to build or expand. Whoever would have known we had to go into federal court and then go to the Supreme Court to argue that churches and synagogues should be opened up like everything else, like the strip clubs were and the pot shops.
That was the craziest. I'm sorry to cut you off, but the craziest
go ahead.
thing to me is you could go buy alcohol,
Right.
but you couldn't go to church.
Right.
They would let you go get drunk and stay in your house with an abusive partner, but they would not let you practice your faith in a place where everyone was, consenting to go inside and would find peace.
Right.
It's very, very weird.
Yeah, and churches were probably the best at meeting the health and safety code criteria than anyone else out there. We worked with countless numbers of them with Zoom calls, gave them clear protocols, and yet they were prevented from meeting like everyone else was. And then we went before the Supreme Court, and in just 3 days, we got the Supreme Court to vote 6-3, ordering Governor Gavin Newsom of California open those churches and synagogues now. He did, and it sent ripples across the country, particularly to other Democrat governors of blue states, that they needed to stop their tyrannical treatment of institutions of worship. So that was a huge thing. And then followed by that, we had all the hundreds of thousands, not millions, who were threatening to have their jobs lost because of their faith. We were the first to step in that. We had the strongest battle in this regard because of all of our offices all across the country. We're still doing that. And now the latest front of attack is purging people of their faith from the workplace, teachers and others, because of their refusal to use a pronoun to affirm a lie, to affirm and encourage confusion with regard to gender identity dysphoria or confusion.
So they're actually attacking people based on that. They're actually going after people based on their unwillingness to use a self-identified pronoun. My mom was a teacher for 36 years. It was her life. She worked with kids who had learning disabilities. She was born to be a teacher. Her last name literally means teacher. So it's just so sad to hear that we've completely, again, when I talked about decaying the moral fabric of society, it starts with education, and that's like the area that's most under attack, it seems. And I used to believe it was just universities, but now it's starting at the age of 4 or 5. I mean, I have some sad stories that happened to my sister. And I'll tell you this is in Canada, where sadly we don't have enough people like you. I'm an American, but she lives in Canada, and there's not enough people like you in Canada. I mean, the government was going into people's homes during COVID who were, let's say, Jewish and just practicing for Shabbat with their family. But my sister had problems in her own school with, two-spirited transgender book reading to her 8-year-old child. And if you don't agree with it, then you're not only a transphobe, you're anti-gay rights, and they will not only they won't even let you take your student out of the school, because they will go and let every other school know that the mother is a transphobe and that no one will accept this child. So it's really troubling to see just how far-reaching it is.
Yeah, it is. And we have actual cases like this across the country defending teachers and employees, once again, who are losing their jobs because they refuse to affirm a lie. Jesus was very loving and compassionate in taking people right where they are, a model for all of us to have grace and love for people right where they are. But he never affirmed a lie in order to pacify someone. He was the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. And he never, ever forsook that being the truth, nor should we as well. We see so many public schools right now engaging in horrific policies of lying to parents about their child who is supposedly has gender identity dysphoria. Studies show that if that child is just left alone, the overwhelming majority of them will no longer have that dysphoria by the time they graduate from high school, if left alone. But that's not what our public schools want to do. They want to nurture it. They want to groom it. And they're lying to parents, and they're not even telling parents that their child has this confusion. And you have someone with a bachelor's degree in education, not even a trained psychiatrist or psychologist, messing up these children. We have cases like this, and we're taking these on all across the country. It is horrific abuse of children all the way down to the preschool level. We even have cases that we've had to take, more than one, defending parents from losing their children, having their children taken from them. There's a case in Orange County, simply because the parents were not going to affirm a gender identity confusion hypothetical. Nothing was wrong with the kids. But that's how sick Child Protective Services and social workers have become. This is now part of the majority of their agenda across the country, particularly in blue states. And we give emergency counsel in these situations all the time now to prevent kids from being taken. It's without question, it's a very dark world. It's a dark trend. The good news I want to leave with, which is real important,
Yep.
and that is we have had incredible, miraculous court decisions because of former President Donald Trump's appointments to the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as circuit courts and district courts. Incredible decisions, from reversing Roe versus Wade to firming up protection of employees of faith in the workplace, business owners of faith, parents' rights to be able to have school choice in states that are tolerant for school choice. It's just been absolutely incredible in all these different areas where we've seen the rights of faith and people of faith have been affirmed more in the last 2 or 3 years than the last 20 years. We're excited about this, and that's why we at Pacific Justice Institute are probably more aggressive in our litigation than ever before, because we are so optimistic on the legal outcomes. It's not going to solve America. What's going to help solve America is for people using their freedoms to live their faith, share their faith, and be bold and courageous. And that's what we need to be, not timid or bunkering down, if you will, but living our faith the way the early church did, to have a real impact on people who need hope, who need truth, and are right now just confused and miserable.
Yeah, I would say that self-censorship is the greatest punishment we can inflict on ourselves, and we've done it. And what you were saying earlier, I think, rings true very much. Of there is truth and there is moral relativism. I talk about this a lot. There's no in between. You either believe that some things are objectively true or absolutely true, or you don't. But when you don't, then nothing is absolutely true. Then an 8-year-old boy can be a girl. They can be a zebra. A 45-year-old man who wants to be an 11-year-old can be an 11-year-old. It's all part of the same moral relativistic view of the world. There is no you can't say one thing is absolutely true and not acknowledge that there is absolute truth. So they have to decay all absolute truth. And again, by doing that, you destroy the concept of God entirely, because if there is absolute truth, there has to be some moral fabric written into the universe. You have to accept something greater than the self, which is why I believe it's so under attack.
Right. The whole concept of fundamental rights and our Constitution is premised upon what you just said. And the sad truth is that if society goes more and more down this path where everything's relative, what may be true to you may not be true to me, etc., there's a price that's paid by society in general, even to the atheists. There's a price they pay in terms of increased crime, increased, issues of the breaking down of the family. There's all kinds of costs to society when we go down that track. It's proven itself, and that's why we need to work for a society that is one that recognizes truth, shares truth in love, and allows people to live that truth boldly and courageously. That's what we need. I remind people, the rapture hasn't happened. For people who are Christians, I say, look, the rapture hasn't happened. Let's stop living like it has, and let's start, living the truth that the early church did, and many others, Wilberforce and others, who did not allow their circumstances to muzzle them from living their faith and sharing their faith and changing the world.
Well, I think that what you've said today, I hope that even people who don't have faith can look at it and see the value in it, because I think there's a lot of value for what you're standing up for, even if someone didn't have faith and could watch this and say, I understand at least. But I think it's incredibly valuable, and I appreciate your time today. I hope people do go to pgi.org and they do donate. And, thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.